American mosques, but nothing's been done about it. Yes, sir.
I was just wondering what your thoughts might be on Israel and the threats that it might face in the near future, especially if the U.S. starts to back away a little bit more from support of it.
Here again, I believe that we can learn a great deal and formulate policy more effectively if we understand what the motives and goals are of the enemy. And the Islamic resistance movement, which goes by the name Hamas, which is an acronym for that, Islamic resistance movement, in Israel, has made its motives and goals abundantly clear in its charter, which it has never amended or rescinded since it was first issued in 1988. And it calls for the destruction of Israel. Israel will rise and remain erect until Islam obliterates it, as it did in the past. This is a quote, that's the epigraph of the Hamas charter. It's a quote from Hassan al-Banna, the founder of the Muslim Brotherhood, the first modern Islamic terrorist organization. That is what they are about. That is what they are after. They will not accept land for peace. They will not offer peace for land. They will only accept concessions on the part of the West as an impetus to move more forthrightly and more strongly to press forward toward that goal of the total destruction of Israel. Israel is one of the several front lines of the global jihad today. And if we were dealing with this problem on that basis, dealing with resisting this ideology, this totalitarian and expansionist ideology, wherever it is found, then we would not be even remotely considering backing away from Israel, but strengthening our commitment to Israel.
Earlier this year, I had a course in school on world religions, and it had a sort of politically correct stance to it with the idea that...
What a surprise.
Yeah, we heard that the Crusades were completely unprovoked offensive wars and such. And one thing that I heard that I was wondering if there was any accuracy to it all was that the country with the most Muslims in it is not in the Middle East, and that it's Indonesia. And
That's right.
Okay, that's true?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Then why do we have the idea usually that Islam is all in the Middle East?
I don't know. I mean, that's just false. People use the terms Arab and Muslim synonymously. Most Muslims today are not Arabs. And the largest population is Indonesia, second is in India. Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, those are all non-Arab countries. It's important to understand this is not, I mean, I think that that's something that clouds the issue here, actually, because people think of it as a racial thing, and that if you oppose Muslim immigration, you must be a racist. It's not about race at all. It's about this ideology that is inimical to the U.S. Constitution in numerous ways. We ought to be dealing with it on the ideological level.
Hi. This morning in the New York Times, there was a front page article with a picture of a woman with just her eyes showing, with a full black niqab on, and the headline read that this was a test of British tolerance. And I was wondering if you could comment, because I know that there have been issues that have been raised in the United States with women who want to go take their driver's license pictures with a hijab on or just their eyes showing.
Yeah.
I think the New York Times is skewed in their picture of British society, and I think the British will concede and give more and more to the Islamic community in Britain. But how do you see that with the United States?
Well, it's coming. I mean, obviously, you're right. There was a push in Florida and in Texas also for people to be able to be completely covered in their driver's license picture, which is absurd on the face of it, or on the whatever of it. The Saudi Arabia doesn't even allow that. You know, you can't go entirely covered up and get a driver's license. I mean, of course, women can't drive, so that doesn't come up. But for identification purposes, you have to show your face. You know, what's common sense in one place is a political struggle in another. There are increasing efforts. I mean, we just saw that in Kansas City, they put in at taxpayer expense footbaths into the airport for the Muslim cab drivers, and they said, oh, well, see, this is not religious. It certainly is religious. In Islamic law, you want to pray those prayers 5 times a day, you have to do various ablutions before you pray. You can't pray before washing, and one of the things you have to wash is your feet. The footbaths that were installed in the Kansas City airport are exactly the same footbaths you will find in mosques. They are not used for anything else. And there is no other, you know, how many times have you been going through an airport and think, I really want to wash my feet? And so there are increasing efforts on the basis of spurious appeals to civil rights to introduce Sharia provisions into the United States. And this is something that we're completely clueless about because nobody even understands that they are Sharia provisions or what the implications of allowing them are.
don't hear any discussion on this, apart from the fact that the first thing Bush did after 9/11 was fly to the communist superpower, Red China. But to what extent do you think that this attempt to get us to submit to coercion is a use of the Muslims, both past, present, and future, either by the Soviet communists or the Red Chinese communists or the Socialist International, basically to use them as a tool for world socialist communist domination?
People have tried to use Muslims for their own political purposes throughout history. One of the stories that I tell in this book is about the Byzantine Emperor John VI Cantacuzenes, who made an alliance with the Ottoman Sultan in a dynastic dispute. He was fighting with his cousin, I believe it was, for the imperial throne. He invited the Turks into Europe to defeat his rival, and they stayed in Europe. They've been there now for 600 some years. He thought that he was going to be able to control them. He thought that he was going to be able to use them for a limited purpose, and they ended up destroying his empire. Anybody who thinks that they can use the Islamic Ummah worldwide for their own political purposes has always had a rude awakening. And I believe that if the Chinese, if the Russians are doing that, and certainly the Chinese have been playing, so have the Russians, have been arming countries in the Middle East and Muslim countries around the Middle East, but they will come to regret that, because the imperative to subjugate the non-believer does not end if one is aided by that non-believer. The non-believer is just making it easier.
I want to ask you a question about any danger that we have from the Muslim mosques in this country, and also about the political impact, because I remember seeing on television after the 2000 election a gathering, and I don't know who it was a gathering of, but they were bragging that the Muslims in Florida had practically unanimously voted for George Bush, which of course would have been enough votes to have carried Florida, and we all know that carrying Florida meant who was president. Are they allies of George Bush? What is the political impact, and do we need to worry about dangers from the mosques?
We do need to worry about dangers from the mosques. This is not a political advertisement, but the governor of Massachusetts, Romney, a few years back, recommended that the mosques be monitored. And this was an eminently sensible suggestion for which he received widespread abuse, and he's never repeated it. But I wish he would, or that the rest of them would pick it up also, because there's no distinction. There is no, as I said before, there's no Islamic group that has excommunicated, pronounced takfir upon Osama bin Laden, or has said that if you believe in jihad and the subjugation of non-Muslims, then you're an unbeliever, then you cannot be in this mosque. You cannot go down the street and you see Baptist church and a Methodist church, but you can't go down the street and see extremist mosque and moderate mosque. They're all mixed up together. And so we don't know where jihad terrorists are working, but we know that they're working in mosques, and we have precedent that they're working in American mosques. Every mosque ought to be monitored as a result of that, unless and until the American Muslim community begins to show, not just in words, but in actual deeds, that they are not allowing this material to be preached in their mosques. But they're not doing that. And you're right, yes, there is a voting bloc. It's not as large as it had been thought. The Council on American Islamic Relations and others have been saying there's 6 or 7 million Muslims in the United States. They're not. They're only about 2.3 million.
Are they voting Republican or Democratic?
No, they were voting Republican, but after 9/11, they've been voting overwhelmingly Democratic and voting as a bloc, and they are very likely to continue to do so.
All right. Well, thank you, Robert Spencer.
Robert Spencer is a fellow with the Free Congress Foundation. This event was part of Politically Incorrect Guide Day 2007, sponsored by the Eagle Forum. For more, visit eagleforum.org.